The evolution of the iPad. Should it evolve? Into what? This is Mac Voices. Mac Voices is supported by the MacVoices Slack. Discussions, questions, and answers, and a place to talk tech with your friends. The MacVoices Slack is available to all patrons of Mac Voices. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices and join in. Jeff, if my notes say correctly, you're up next.
All right, and I will try and keep it short and sweet because everyone has covered so much of this already. All right, we're dealing with a device that focuses on touch first versus a device that focuses on keyboard and mouse first for input. So Apple needs to make sure that they are properly addressing both of those when they are working on their platforms. That said, iPadOS is still hobbled by being, at this point, still an extension of iOS, and it really needs to be set free to be its own thing. And what I'm hoping is that Apple tipped their hand at making that a reality for us, and that we'll see more of that at WWDC. Now, where I think Apple may have tipped their hand for us, and I can be completely wrong with that, is when they showed us the new Magic Keyboard, and they described the keyboard and the function keys. It has an escape key, which they didn't point out, but you can see it right there. The taptic feedback Magic Trackpad built in, and then they said it's and I'm paraphrasing here. It feels like you're using a Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And kept going. And
Did
that
they say
line just stood out to me, and I'm like,
more like a Mac than ever.
Yes, more like a Mac than ever. And that stood out to me in a very big way. And what I'm hoping is that Apple is telegraphing something we will be getting that makes managing files on an iPad easier, working cross-application easier. And if so, that'll be fantastic. I will never buy a product on the hope that new features will come. So whenever I get around to buying this iPad, I'll be buying it for what it does now. But if Apple is going to do things like this for us, and we get that this fall with a new version of iPadOS, score, that'll be great.
Dave, I think you're up next.
Yeah, well, let's wrap this up. I'll be very brief on this. I'm thinking on the perspective of the business world. Okay, you got folks that are using Windows tablets. Okay, those have touch screens. They're working in that interface. It's not the best ideal thing in the world. Using styluses, you're writing reports. You're doing all kinds of stuff with that. But then you have systems that don't work well with Windows. So then you move on to an iPad. Maybe you have an iPad as a companion device. Do the same thing. Both are touchscreens. Both work in the same or similar ways, but the problem is the interface and the system that it's working with. So macOS may work okay as a touchscreen in the future. I put a link in our notes here showing that this had been talked about in the past, but I think our issue here is the fact that the iPad tends to be a better touch experience than. And I'm giving the example of Windows because Windows does have touchscreens and macOS does not.
I've got one last thing I want to say, but Webb, you've been setting up something. Your quilt has disappeared, but now you have something else you want to show us. And you're muted, Webb.
You're right, I was. I got the stand that I use normally in the bedroom, but I've been using it up here in the office for a little bit. That's just for the iPad that I sit here and it stands on the floor. It's just articulating arm. It's just what I use when I'm sitting in bed watching. Sometimes I wish I had the wireless keyboard configured for it so I could sit in bed and type. But anyway, just trying to move us along. I just wanted to show the arm. So
no, it's. I mean, I think that's a great option. So I mean, I'm trying to Pardon me. I'm trying to visualize it if you're in bed, Webb. So does the arm? I mean, does it does it slide over or move over far enough that you can actually lay in bed and use it?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, is it perfect? No, I wish it had a little bit more throw on it, but then it gets out of balance too. Then it starts tipping over. So, but anyway, just the device that I used was I watched the iPad while I'm in bed, so I don't have to hold the damn thing. So
It almost feels like that something more like a mic boom arm would be a better solution if it had a proper gripper
That
on it
is
for
kind of.
the iPad.
I have a stand like that too, and it's awesome. I don't use it in bed, but I'll set it up at my desk next to next to me. So I used to do it, with Zoom meetings and stuff, and it's great.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to bring up is everything we're talking about is what we want, and we're not normal people.
Right.
And so yeah, in more ways than one.
Right.
But I have to wonder how many of there has to be market research done on this. And I just feel like we're arguing over something that we would like because we're geeks. And I just wonder how many people out there who have an iPad are really dissatisfied and saying, "Boy, I wish I could run macOS on this." I think they take it.
Percentage though.
Yeah. I mean, in our group, yeah, it's high, but I just don't see it as a market, a product that has a substantial market.
Well, Chuck,
you're talking about a $3,000 device.
Chuck, I need to push back on that because way back when, and back in the early '80s, it was the geeks who understood raster graphics, who got delivered, had their fantasies and dreams delivered in the Macintosh. It's similar thing moving forward. Similar thing, geeks wanted a computer in their pocket, without a keyboard like the Raspberry. So these things move forward. So yes, we are geeks. We are at the leading edge. That doesn't mean that these ideas and visions have no merit. It just means we're ahead of the market and where it's going. And as I typed in the chat room for our group, Tim Cook has done a great job, but there's been no product innovation other than, like, what do I say? Make them thinner and lighter, which is Johnny Ive, and add new technology to devices and then raise their prices, which is an ops sort of thing that Tim Cook and has been doing. They've been doing it successfully. Look at the prices of the iPhone Generation X Pro Max, for example. But the magical device that it can. You can tune it to be either a touch-based iPad or a keyboard-based Mac, with multiple windows or limited windows. I don't think that people in the mold of let's make it more expensive, let's make it faster and less expensive to manufacture and raise the prices and let's fix all the bugs out there. It doesn't seem to me that's the DNA for innovating a new type of product. And again, as I said in the chat to our group, is I think Apple certainly has the capability and skills there to do something like this, but until they get kicked in the butt and have a fall as measured by stagnant or declining sales, I think they're just on this path of make them thinner, lighter, add new technology, and make the devices more expensive. I don't see that this team has proven that they can innovate in terms of products. Back to the rest of the panel.
I that seems kind of strong. I mean, Vision OS, pretty strong innovation. I think part of the problem is what you just said, a word you just used, hybrid. So this is sort of not a pure solution, and Apple likes pure solutions. They don't like to hack things together and take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and 2 + 2 = 5. That's not Apple's general thing. They like to do things very purely, and I'm not sure that's served them very well for the most part. But this, for one thing, I think doing this would be an admission that iPadOS is not going where it needs to go, and and can't.
Oh no, they don't need to do that. They can come out with they've innovated and they've unified touch devices and keyboard devices.
And
they could do it if they wanted to, and put all their superlative adjectives on it, and then just move forward.
And they would, if this happens, they would. But I'm sure, and I'll bet that the discussions, just like we're having on this panel, have been happening inside Apple for years.
I agree.
And I like I say, I my guess is that this product exists inside Apple right now. There are iPads running exactly the way I described right now. And it's simply, it won't take months to develop. It will just simply take a decision. We're going to make this public. It could happen at WWDC. That could be the meaning of as Jeff said, them saying this is as close to the Mac experience. And one thing that I think, from a few years ago when we first started discussing this, that I think this is more likely to happen, somewhat sooner, is Apple has done this the other way. I was nothing but shocked when Apple decided A, did Catalyst, and B, allowed iOS apps to run on the Mac. That's just this kind of hybrid kind of a thing. So, they showed a willingness to cross the streams there. So now, I'm hoping at some point they'll take this one extra step and let's cross the streams one. And I think, Chuck, I think there's a huge market for it. Developers, not just Mac and iOS developers, but web developers, researchers, people running Python, all those kind of people. They all want to do this kind of stuff, and I think would snarf it up. And then they could probably make a 15-inch iPad, and people would, essentially it would unify, basically unify their product line. Instead of we have Macs and iPads, well, now it's just one thing, and some of them are more towards iOS, like maybe they still have iPad Airs and whatnot that don't but then you go, and at the other end you have things like Mac Studios, but it's a continuum instead of this. To me that makes all the sense in the world.
Eric, I want to get you in because you've been talking about the Vision Pro in relation to part of this discussion, and I think it's a really interesting point. You're muted.
Let me try that again.
We want the wisdom, Eric.
I'll take the beauty. Yeah.
With the Apple Vision Pro, you get the Mac Virtual Display, which gives almost all of the functionality you're talking about, but you still have two devices. So, and it's useful. Right there, if there's software that you can't run right away, or like the version of Teams you need to run only runs on the Mac, it doesn't run in the Apple Vision Pro. It gives you access to just a couple little things here and there that make a huge difference. Most of the time, don't need to be connected. If I'm on a weekend and looking at movies or whatever, or working in just the Apple Vision Pro is fine. During the day, when I'm getting a bunch of work done and I've got, meetings and remoting into work and using a VPN, I connect to the Mac and I have the Mac doing all the stuff it normally does while I have some other windows in virtual space. It's wonderful. So I think the need to and Apple Vision Pro is basically an iPad kind of in its own internal screen, and I would like that experience on an iPad too.
Isn't that VNC that Jim was raising a couple minutes ago?
It's working a tiny bit different from that. It's not just that, but it's a similar concept. The thing is you don't really need to connect to a second device. The Apple Vision Pro doesn't have the power and battery life and all the rest of it to actually pull off running a virtual Mac. Yeah, you can you can connect to another machine, and I do. I mean, I use that all the time, but I can't connect to more than one easily. I can connect to one. So, I'm looking forward to the new iPad just to see, can it keep up with more connections.
So, if again, I don't want to go down a rat hole and Chuck can adjudicate this, but when you say you can't connect to one, are you talking about from your Vision Pro, or because on my Mac, I recently bought a new Mac Mini to replace a 13-year-old device and blah 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 blah, and I can remote desktop into both of them. So when you say you can't do multiple devices, I'm thinking we don't have a shared experience, because unless it is for the Vision Pro.
Well, the Vision Pro doing the Apple Virtual Desktop, it's one.
Okay.
There's another app that lets you bring Windows in that kind of makes it like you have more than one display, but you get, one display. Even with an iPad, it's, really, you can plug in a second display, but it sort of gets bogged down. I'm hoping that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, and why I was willing to plunk down money right away is, hoping it can keep up. If I've got a second display and I'm running, two different things on it, can I make it do more without, having it get stuck?
Eric, when you
We'll
said
find out in a week.
Yeah, forgive me if I misunderstood. When you said you can bring another window or would bring windows in, did you mean windows, or are you just talking about of something in a window?
So if you do the virtual display, you get a solid, basically, window that is a Mac.
Right.
There's another piece of software that will let you take applications running on the Mac, bring them out into the Apple Vision Pro world, so you can have those windows kind of floating around you. So you can have the Mac window, and then maybe you suck out one other terminal window or something and have that floating. It's still running off the Mac, but it's kind of like having more than one display, but it's application window based.
Okay, so you're not talking about a Microsoft Windows integration.
No, although you could do like Windows Remote Desktop on the Mac and have that window sitting there in your virtual space, and that would give you that same feel.
Okay. I mean, don't you feel like that this is a little bit early in the Vision Pro's life to be expecting some of this stuff?
Yeah, but it works.
Okay.
So why not?
Okay.
And it's nice. I mean, it works well. Like, I don't know, when you've had to travel and you're sitting outside at a outdoor dining place in bright, scorching sunlight, and you open up your laptop and you go to type something and you can't see anything on the screen. Put on the Apple Vision Pro headset, poof, everything is perfect. Yet you can still see what's going on around you. Now, you might not necessarily want to have the screen be what everybody sees of you, but in my case, I'm willing to go for that.
Well, you bring up something I think that has been not touched on at all tonight, and that is the new screen on these iPad Pros. I'm anxious to see them in a real world environment, out in the sunlight, to just see. Now, someone, and maybe someone will remember who I read said it, but they said that they had gone to the demo. David, was it was it you, or anyway, they had gone to one of the demos in a very, very brightly lit demo environment.
That wasn't me.
And the screens were just really popping. So I'm anxious to see just if that solves one of the downsides of the existing iPads.
Justine, maybe?
Could have been.
I didn't watch. I wouldn't doubt it, Ben. But I'm sorry. Somebody on something I was listening to or read said that. So it sounded like the screens were making a substantial difference. One thing we didn't talk about, and we're pretty much out of time, but I feel like I want to just touch on it a little bit, is the Air as a standalone device, with an M2.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough of an upgrade? Should they have jumped it to the M3?
I'm not surprised.
The larger screen's enough of an upgrade for some users.
Good point. I mean, it's got a lot of, the landscape camera. It's just, I also feel like that with the M4 and the iPads, those iPads are being prepped for what we're going to see at DubDub from the AI perspective.
Yes, agree.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, if you have time, I will share a thought on that, and if not,
Please.
I will keep my mouth shut.
No, please. We're doing good.
Okay. Apple nailed it by going to the M2 with the new iPad Air, because the manufacturing costs for the whole product line have at this point been recouped. So it's a much lower cost than going to the M3. They're able to offer this device at a much lower price point than they otherwise would. And the reality is, until today, people were looking at the iPad Pro with an M2 processor as this amazing, powerful machine. Now you're getting that pretty much for a much lower price point. I think Apple made exactly the right move by making the new Air an M2.
I've always said that the Air is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That kind of inside baseball. The first generation 3-nanometer process really isn't compatible with any processors before or after it. So it made sense for manufacturing to go from M2 to have the M2 to M4 gap. Since I don't think we're going to be seeing the M3 products after the M4 is announced in the MacBooks.
Really, Ben?
Yeah. I think that's right. I think just the economics of silicon manufacturing, that makes total sense. You want to, especially for Apple, the volume that they do, they want to move forward. They'll only hold on to legacy products, things, because they want to have old, lower cost products in their product line. But from a silicon perspective, it makes absolute sense. Once it can start to yield things at a true 3-nanometer, move absolutely everything over to it. And that's been sort of consistent with what Apple has been doing with their with their M series processors, with a little bit of distortion because of TSMC had a little bit of a hiccup on getting to a 3-nanometer, so they had some interim process augmentations in between. But that's why I think one of the key reasons why Apple dumped Intel is they want to be on a periodic life cycle, and they can introduce things, and all these processors sort of going back, I think we saw all these teasers about AI, and they talked a little bit about what the new core neural processor would do, and then there's some talk about it with QuickTime as well as Procreate. So it's really, and at the earnings call, Tim Cook was making all these tease comments there. So I think you're really going to see a big AI theme at WWDC in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly I think this is one of the advantages they have is just absolutely moving forward, and getting the latest and greatest out there, when they can. There's no reason to go on, something, good, better, best. There's no reason to, go and stick with gooder when there's a best out there that, they can get, at very attractive, terms, because, they do way more volume with TSMC than NVIDIA does, for example. So, Apple is really in the catbird seat as far as bringing new advanced chip technologies into the world.
Mark, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think it's interesting, though, that at the moment, the way they're setting this up, and now I'm doing a bit of prognostication, but if we really are going to see Apple make a big AI move, they're really setting this up to be only at the top end of, assuming that what we're hearing in the rumors is true, that they're really setting this up so that the AI enhancements will only be available in the top end machines. At least,
okay, that's May. Fast forward to a Mac event in October. Pick a date, October. Where they're updating the entire Mac line to have M4 processors. That will change things completely.
That would, but is it realistic to say you're going to revamp the whole line for the? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
The whole and line at that point, I think it's it deals with because being in the Valley here, you hear all sorts of exodus and turnover and staffing and people at Apple, blah 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 blah. I think certainly if TSMC can ramp up their 3-nanometer process to provide enough M4 processors across the entire Apple line, they can do it. If they can satisfy iPhone demand this fall, Macs are chump change. They're like 5 or 10% of the volume of iPhones. So I think that's going to be the key determinant is availability of parts, not so much engineering bandwidth and the ability to design these products, etc.
Ben, you get the last word before we get out of here.
Would it have to be just the high end? As Apple notated in the event, they've been putting what in the industry calls AI cores or MPUs in chips all the way back to the A11.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, that's a fair point. And again, I'm doing something I hate. I'm listening to the rumors. I'm listening to all the speculation and some of the little hints that Apple has dropped that what's coming next is going to be AI oriented. And maybe I've fallen victim to the idea of it being the M4s. Maybe it's the newest version of the operating systems that would tap into whatever cores, whatever machines would have. So it'll be fun to see what happens. Gentlemen, thank you. Interesting discussion that got way off track from the Apple event, but that's par for the course with this group. Let's go around the room, see where folks can connect with you, and then we'll get out of here. And I think I'm going to switch it around. Eric Bolden, because you were struck by lightning, we want to give you, the top billing. Where can folks connect with you?
And I lost all my hair.
Hey, you look like Picard now.
I shined things up and showed up anyway. I'm good. My mind feels blown. That's why I'm wearing the shirt. It used to be a really, all-in-one dragon, and yeah. Sorry. I got sidetracked. Like tonight,
Yeah.
I can be found now Monday nights with Marty doing the Vision Profiles podcast. And you can reach us at visionprofilespodcast@gmail.com or go to visionprofiles.info to get more information. And you can listen to it pretty much in all of the podcast places.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Glad you made it back. Mark Fuccio, I hate to bring it up, but I thought you were supposed to leave about 45 minutes ago. Are you in trouble?
Yeah. When I went on, when I turned on my video, talked to my wife, and that this is a way more fascinating discussion. So, I've got a special dispensation. But
wow,
yeah,
you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Have fun on the couch, Mark.
Yeah.
Make it short and sweet. You can find me at Zitter at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio. And for those who don't know, Zitter is a portmanteau of X and Twitter.
And this may be Mark's last appearance on the show if his wife has anything to say about it. So, Jeff Gamet, thank you for being here as always with your wisdom. And I trust that you're looking down, ordering your new iPad right now.
Okay. I have been playing with configurations to see what works for me. Anyhow, okay, so when I'm not off making popcorn, so I can sit and watch the craziness go down, you can find me on social media as Jay Gamet, and I'm active on Mastodon, Instagram, and Threads. Then for shows, here on Tuesdays with you, thank you for letting me join in. And then on Thursdays on Dave's In Touch with iOS. And Dave, thank you for tolerating me as well. And then on the British Tech Network, Thursdays on The Big Show, Fridays on The Mac Show, and then also Brian Chaffin and I do The Context Machine.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Dr. Ray, I expect you to be in surgery removing the screen from your Mac any second now.
I've thought about it.
Okay, well, there you go. Then
is that called a screenectomy?
Yeah. Have scalpel will travel.
You'll have to ask Federico.
Yeah. Where can folks find you, Jim?
You can find me on the internet at provue.com, PROVUE, and also on Mastodon at provuejim at techhub.social.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I was so tempted to ask Webb Bixby what he watches in bed at night with that little iPad, and I thought, no, that's not a really good idea.
I want to know. Webb.
Masterpiece Theater.
TMI.
Okay.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
Where can folks find you, Webb?
And Webb will not be in trouble with his wife tonight.
Yeah. Where can folks find you, Webb?
Oh, let's see here. I got all kinds of lists. Why don't we go with you can find me at Threads. Webb Bixby, WEBBIXBY at Threads. You can find me there.
Great.
We don't
Thanks,
talk about
Webb.
Threads much. I thought I'd throw it in there. So.
No, it's good. Good point. It seems to be up and coming. That's a whole other discussion.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
So, Jim, what do you think? No.
Yeah. so the last of the Redmen, Mr. Ben Roethig. Ben, where can folks find you?
Well, Chuck, you can find me on your social media of choice. Well, pretty much all of them at Ben Roethig. On Thursdays, you can find me on In Touch with iOS with Mr. Dave Ginsburg. On Tuesday nights, you can find me here on In Touch with iOS. And I might still have a show or two of the British Tech Network left in me before I start my new IT job.
I will cherish every episode that you're able to join in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. Last but not least, we end up where we started with Mr. David Ginsburg. David, thanks for being here. Where can folks find you?
Thanks for having me, Chuck. And you can find me at InTouchWithIOS at InTouchWithIOS.com. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/InTouchWithIOS. I'm here on Tuesday nights. Always having a blast here on the Mac Show on Fridays. And I'm on Mastodon at DaveG65 at Mastodon.cloud.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say a special thanks to the chat room. We had a larger than normal live audience tonight. We had a lot of people in the chat room, very active. I tried to keep up. You guys were asking and answering a lot of your own questions, so I just let you go. But thanks. We always appreciate you being here and love to have your opinions, whether you agree or disagree with any of us. It's what makes this so much fun. This is MacVoices Live, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.